Good morning, English 10. Here is my weekly expectations video for the week of April 27th through May 1st. So you'll have two ongoing tasks that I'm going to introduce to you today. And you'll start this week, but you will actually continue doing these tasks basically until the end of the school year. And I'll explain each separately. So I'll start with the first mandatory task. So one of them has to do with grammar, and that's this task. So I'll show you on Google Classroom. It's going to be revolving around you doing a set of grammar concepts each week, a practice assignment, and a quiz. So if you've never used a website called No Red Ink before, it's super easy to figure out. That's what we're going to do this through. So on Google Classroom, when you get into this assignment, it says sign up for my English 10 honors class at, and here's a link. So if you click on this link, the class code I also have included here for you. Once you have joined my class, you might be asked to answer some questions about yourself, because I'm pretty sure before you sign up for a class, you have to make an account, but it's going to ask you some questions about like your preferences. This is so when it generates sentences, they're about these things that you enjoy. So it's kind of like entertaining. So it just kind of personalizes things for you. So you'll do that first. And then if you have signed up for my class, in your assignments tab, you should see for this week compound sentence practice, which is due Wednesday at midnight. And then the compound sentence quiz, you will not be able to see yet because I will not release that until this Thursday, the 30th. And then I'll do that Thursday morning. You have until 2:30 p.m. that day to take the quiz. So the idea is that you spend some time earlier this week doing the grammar practice, and then it culminates in the quiz. The quiz is on all of the same concepts as the practice for that week. So each week, what I'm going to have you do, so on this Google Classroom assignment, you have the link to No Red Ink. You also have this document. Each week, this is what you're going to submit to Google Classroom. And it's not that you have to actually do anything in this document each week, but if you see I have the rubric in here, if you would submit this to me each week, I will give you your grade for that week, and then I will send it back to you. And then you'll send it back to me the following week with me being able to put in the next week's grade. So eventually you will have 5 separate grades for these assignments. And if you look at the rubric, the way to get a 4 is that you complete your assignment and that you pass the quiz. That's the criteria for a 4. There is no criteria for a 3. And then 2, if you complete your assignment, but you don't pass the quiz. And then a 1 would be if you only complete the assignment or if you only complete the quiz, but not both. And I think a 0 would be if you don't do either. So then if you want to project ahead, I have what the assignments are going to be for the following weeks. You will not see them in your No Red Ink account until the day that I release it. So like Monday, May 4th, the conjunction, semicolons, and colons practice will release. So you won't be able to work ahead because I don't want you to cram too much into one week. I want you to pace yourself. The reason why I'm having you do these, first and foremost, a lot of this grammar knowledge is essential to becoming a better writer, but it's also going to help you next year on the ACT. In the more recent applicability, it's going to be what your final exam for English 10 honors will be on. So the last week of school, we will have a final exam. It'll be a Google form online multiple choice test about the grammar concepts that you've learned. And it'll be mostly in ACT style format. So we'll talk about that closer to the exam. But this is going to be your rubric for the final exam. So basically, you're allowed to get 2 questions wrong and you can still get a 4. So that's one of your assignments for this week. And again, that will be something that's ongoing. And then your other assignment is an action research project. So this is something that I'm actually very excited about. Ms. Kowalski, Ms. Jane, and myself came up with this last week as we wanted you guys to apply your research skills to something. We wanted it to be something relevant and something interesting and something that would maybe be something you could focus on during this time of staying at home. So the first step that you're going to do this week, when you open up the document, is going to be to propose your idea. So let me walk you through what this actual project entails. It This is directions. A big focus of this year's learning has been conducting quality research. For the remainder of the year, you will be applying your research ability to grow your knowledge and or perfect a skill. What knowledge or skill, you might ask? Well, that's entirely up to you as long as it fits into one of the categories below. Some ideas of the kinds of things, that would make good projects are listed below. No matter what idea you choose, it should have a research component and an action component. So these are the ideas that we have that are the potential action research project options. You can choose one of these exactly as written, or you can create one that's similar, or you can create one that's totally different, but it fits underneath one of these categories. So the categories are the arts, cooking, baking, athleticism, fitness, and hands-on, okay? So you can read through those yourself, but I'll just pick one as an example so you can see how it works. So like I mentioned before, each of them have a research component and an action component. So no matter what you choose, there'll be some aspect of research involved. What kind of research you do is completely up to you. The research could be internet articles, TED Talk videos, documentaries, just websites in general, could be print magazines, print books, could be interviewing people over the phone or in person if someone of your family members has something valuable to offer on the topic you choose. Any of that is involved in research, okay? So the research component for the first idea under the arts says study different works from important periods in art history. Notice that that's very generic. We did that on purpose because we want you to be able to be flexible. So if you were to choose this topic, you would likely narrow that focus down to an important period in art history, or choose several, maybe choose 3 different ones. And then your research, I would maybe go on some of the school databases, which are linked down here. Or you can, obviously Google it and try to do your best to find quality sources that you are going to be researching, like those historical art time periods and pieces of artwork. And then the action component, which is what you would actually do with the information, is then you would recreate those works using items found already in your house. So that's an idea. That's a suggestion of something you could do. So no matter what project option you choose, there has to be a research component and an action component. If you read through all of those and you find one that you like, or you come up with one as you are inspired by one that we came up with, your first step is going to be to email me with your project proposal. So this is due by Tuesday the 28th at 2:30. So it says to send a professional email to your teacher with your proposed project. Your teacher will then send you a reply that will either approve the project or offer suggestions to make it better fit the requirements of this assignment. And I'm going to give you part of your score for this week will be on the professional nature of that email. And I have an example that I'll show you in a second. And then once your project proposal is approved, you're going to copy that project idea into this blue box and delete everything above. So once you have your idea, once you have your idea approved, you will delete all of this information because you will no longer need the project options and the beginning of your project. And actually you could delete all of this also, like these pieces of information too. You might want to keep the links to the library resources. Then your project won't have all the clutter. It'll start where it needs to start. Then just so you know, so some of you might come up with an idea that works great for 2 weeks and then you're like, I feel like I'm done. I don't have anything to do for the last 3 weeks. You will have an opportunity to revise your project after the first 2 weeks. So after May 8th, we're going to give you that option, meaning that you could add to it or you could come up with an additional second one to focus on for the rest of the weeks. You do not have to change it or revise it, but we'll give you that opportunity. So after you've gotten your project approved, so in theory, this would be, you would look and see if I sent you an email back by Wednesday morning, and then you will begin. So your first week and each consequential week will have, or consecutive week, will have the same expectation. You're going to fill out a chart. The chart for week 1 is shorter than the other charts because you did have to come up with your project this week as well. So you're going to document your learning each week by completing the white parts of that chart for that week. There are 4 weeks of charts total. So each chart you will have to find artifacts, summaries of what that artifact is, and reflection on the value of that artifact on your learning process. What an artifact can be, I highlighted or colored the red. The ones in red are research-based. The ones in green are personal progress-based. So some should be coming from both categories. The first week we realize may all be research-based because you're just starting out. But once you've gotten some research under your belt, you will likely be able to start on your action part of it as early as week 2. So I will show you down below where this all goes. And you will get a score each week, and there will be large summative scores on your completed charts. And this is an example rubric, but there's a rubric underneath each chart as well. And notice that there's a linked table of contents. So if you want to quickly go to the week that's assigned, you can click on here and it'll take you right to that chart. So this is due Thursday the 30th by 2:30 p.m. in Google Classroom. So you will continuously submit the same document, and I will check it, grade it, send it back to you, just like the grammar one. So this is where you put your artifacts, and this is where you explain the artifact and why it's valuable to your project. The rubric for this week is that it goes with your professional email and that you have 2 relevant artifacts with thorough explanations. The following weeks will all be identical. You will have to find 4 artifacts, and that's all that your rubric will be dealing with are just those artifacts, because obviously you won't have to propose a project every week. This is the optional revision piece, which we'll talk about when that week comes. Chart 3, chart 4. And then I'm going to have us do some kind of share out that week before final exams. I have not yet decided what that will look like, but just be prepared for that. So those are the expectations for this week. I will quickly show you that there's an example. So Miss Jane is doing a gardening project, and she was kind enough to share her example so you guys could see. So this is her example email. So just some things to note about the email to follow along with if that's helpful. And then she also put in her first week chart. So notice that her artifacts are both research-based because she has not yet have gotten enough information to start the action part. That's perfectly okay for week 1. If you notice in the rubrics for weeks 2 and beyond, having a mix of research and personal progress artifacts is necessary for a 4. So, okay, the artifacts themselves, if you're doing online, you should have a link and a citation. If it's a print source, you could just have the citation and make sure that you're formatting those correctly. There is a link in the top of the action research document that reminds you of how to do the citations. And obviously you can look on PowerSchool at all of our things that we've learned and used along the way related to that. So those are your expectations for this week. Note that I put on your online learning document that you will not be required to complete an independent book project for quarter 4. So just enjoy the reading of the book. I will have you share out during that same week before final exams. Again, I'm not exactly sure how that'll look, but I think I'm going to do a Zoom session to have you guys just kind of informally share out about your books. Last thing before I sign off, there's an optional Zoom session. I'll host it this week, Thursday at 1:30 p.m. The link is here, and I'll also put it on Google Classroom that morning. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me, and best of luck.